Forget the aliens. Forget the whips, the chains, and the Hollywood myth of a million exhausted slaves dying in the sand. The actual truth behind how the Great Pyramid of Giza was built is infinitely more terrifying, brilliant, and bloody than anything you have ever been told. 2.3 million stone blocks, 6 million tons of rock, aligned to true north with a margin of error so infinitesimally small that modern engineers still struggle to replicate it. And they did it all without compasses, without pulleys, and without wheels. If you think the Great Pyramid was a sudden stroke of isolated genius, you are completely wrong. It was the climax of a 200-year obsession, a brutal era of catastrophic collapses, trial, error, and an architectural arms race that almost bankrupted an entire civilization. So, how did they actually pull off the ultimate impossible engineering feat? The answer lies not in magic or extraterrestrial intervention, but in a forgotten diary, a massive ancient logistics machine, and a shocking new discovery hidden deep inside the pyramid itself. To understand the Great Pyramid, you have to look at the spectacular failures that came before it. The Giza Plateau didn't just happen. We are in 2580 BC, during the reign of Khufu. But Khufu wasn't the first to attempt to build a mountain. For centuries, Egyptian kings were buried under flat, rectangular mud brick structures called mastabas. They were unimpressive. They crumbled. Then came Djoser, whose architect Imhotep had the crazy idea to stack these mastabas on top of one another, creating the step pyramid at Saqqara. It was a revolution, but it wasn't a true, smooth-sided pyramid. The real madness began with Khufu's father, the pharaoh Snefru. Snefru was utterly obsessed with achieving the perfect geometric pyramid, and his obsession almost destroyed the Egyptian economy. His first attempt at Mihdam was a disaster. It literally collapsed under its own weight, sending thousands of tons of rubble crashing down. But Snefru didn't stop. He ordered a second pyramid to be built at Dahshur. Halfway through construction, the engineers realized the angle was too steep. The internal chambers began to crack. Panic set in. To prevent another catastrophic collapse, they abruptly changed the angle, creating what we now call the bent pyramid. It stands today as a massive, embarrassing monument to human error. But Snefru was relentless. He tried a third time. Every mathematical error corrected. Every structural flaw compensated for. The result was the Red Pyramid, the world's first successful true pyramid. So, when Khufu takes the throne, he inherits a legacy of blood, sweat, and perfected mathematics. The blueprint exists. The technical tradition has been bought and paid for by the failures of the past. But Khufu wants to go bigger, much bigger. He chooses the Giza Plateau because of its solid bedrock. It has to be solid because he is about to place 6 million tons of weight upon it. If the bedrock shifts even an inch, the entire monument will tear itself apart. But securing the foundation was nothing compared to the nightmare of getting the stones there in the first place. This is where the true genius of the ancient Egyptians shines, and it has nothing to do with magic. It's pure, brutal, hyper-efficient logistics. Most of the core limestone blocks, about 2 million of them, were quarried right there on the Giza Plateau. They weren't looking for perfection. They were looking for volume. But the outer casing, the blindingly white Tura limestone that would make the pyramid shine like a second sun, that had to come from across the Nile. And the massive granite blocks for the king's chamber, those had to be transported from Aswan, over 500 miles to the south. How do you move 50-ton granite blocks across a desert country without trucks or trains? You don't. You let the water do it for you. In 2013, archaeologists working near the Red Sea made one of the greatest discoveries of the 21st century. The Diary of Mirror. It's an ancient logbook written by a middle-ranking inspector who was directly involved in the construction of the Great Pyramid. And it shatters every myth you've ever heard. Mirror's diary doesn't talk about mystical incantations. It talks about spreadsheets. It records the daily, grueling micromanagement of transforming the landscape. The Egyptians physically reshaped the environment, digging massive artificial canals from the Nile directly to the base of the Giza Plateau. When the Nile flooded every year, they didn't see it as a natural disaster. They used it as a hydraulic lift. Specially designed cargo barges, laden with massive stones, rode the floodwaters right to the construction site. Once on land, the physics of moving the blocks was breathtakingly simple yet brilliant. They didn't have the wheel for transport. They used massive wooden sleds. And to overcome the massive friction of dragging a 2-ton stone across the sand, they did something ingenious. Wall paintings from ancient tombs show workers pouring a liquid directly in front of the sled. For decades, historians thought this was a religious purification ritual. It wasn't. It was physics. By wetting the sand with the exact right amount of water, it creates capillary bridges between the sand grains, cutting the friction in half. The sleds glided. A monumental task suddenly became manageable for a coordinated team of men. But who were these men? If they weren't slaves, who would willingly subject themselves to this hell? Before we reveal the shocking truth about the workforce that lived and died in the shadow of the pyramid, hit that subscribe button. We are uncovering the deepest secrets of the ancient world every week, and you won't want to miss what we find next. For centuries, the Greek historian Herodotus sold the world a lie. He claimed the pyramids were built by a miserable army of 100,000 slaves, whipped into submission. Modern archaeology has completely ripped that theory to shreds. When researchers excavated the area south of the Sphinx, they didn't find the mass graves of disposable slaves. They found a sprawling, highly organized metropolis. This was a worker city, capable of housing, feeding, and caring for over 20,000 people. And these people were eating very, very well. Archaeologists uncovered massive bakeries and thousands of animal bones, prime cuts of beef, sheep, and fish. These workers were eating better than the average Egyptian peasant. Furthermore, skeletons found in the nearby cemeteries showed signs of healed fractures, amputations, and successful brain surgeries. You do not waste high-level medical care on expendable slaves. These were skilled laborers, architects, masons, and seasonal farmers. During the Nile's annual flood, when the agricultural fields were completely submerged, the farmers couldn't work. Instead of sitting idle, they were drafted into the National Pyramid Project. It was a form of taxation paid in labor, yes, but it was also a deeply religious duty. By building the pharaoh's tomb, they were ensuring his immortality, which in turn guaranteed the cosmic balance of the entire universe. If the pharaoh achieved eternal life, the gods would be happy, the Nile would flood again, and the crops would grow. They were proud of their work. Deep inside the relieving chambers above the king's chamber, places no human eye was ever meant to see, workers painted graffiti. They left their gang names. Names like the Friends of Khufu or the Drunkards of Menkaure. It's the ancient equivalent of "we were here." They were organized into specialized fills, competing against each other in a monumental gamification of labor. The logistics of feeding, rotating, and managing 20,000 people on an active construction site without complete chaos is an administrative miracle just as impressive as the pyramid itself. But even with a willing workforce, you still have to get millions of blocks up into the sky. And this is where the mystery deepens. How did they get the stones to the top? If you ask 10 different Egyptologists, you will get 10 different angry answers. The ramp theory is the only logical explanation, but the type of ramp is a logistical nightmare. A straight ramp leading all the way to the 480-foot summit would have to be over a mile long. Building that ramp would require more material than the pyramid itself. It's completely absurd. A zigzag or corkscrew ramp wrapping around the outside makes more sense, but navigating multi-ton blocks around 90-degree corners on a narrow ledge is a recipe for disaster. And it would obscure the sight lines, making the pinpoint architectural alignment impossible to check during construction. This has led some brilliant architects, like Jean-Pierre Houdin, to propose the radical theory of an internal ramp, a spiraling tunnel built inside the pyramid's outer walls, used to drag the blocks up, which was later sealed off and forgotten. For years, this was just a wild theory. But then, modern particle physics entered the chat. In 2017, the Scan Pyramids project did the unthinkable. They didn't drill. They didn't dynamite. They used muons, cosmic ray particles that harmlessly pass through stone. By measuring how these particles scattered, they could map the internal density of the Great Pyramid like a giant X-ray. And what they found shocked the scientific world. High above the Grand Gallery, buried deep within the solid mass of limestone, they detected a void, a massive, airplane-sized cavity that is completely sealed off. No corridors lead to it. No ancient texts mention it. It has been sitting in absolute darkness for 4,500 years. Is it a hidden burial chamber Khufu built to fool grave robbers? Is it an internal ramp mechanism? Or is it a structural relieving cavity designed to take the weight off the fragile chambers below? As of right now, we simply do not know. The pyramid is still holding onto its secrets, but what we can see inside is staggering enough. The entrance leads into descending corridors that make you feel like you are being swallowed by the earth. It is suffocating, claustrophobic, and designed to disorient. Then, suddenly, it opens up into the Grand Gallery, a soaring 28-foot-high cathedral of stone, built with a corbelled vault technique where each layer of stone edges slightly inward. It is a masterpiece of stress distribution. At the end of this gallery lies the King's Chamber, completely encased in Aswan red granite. The blocks here fit together with such psychotic precision that you cannot slip a razor blade between them. There is no elaborate artwork here, no hieroglyphs telling stories of the gods. The Great Pyramid is devoid of decoration. This aesthetic is pure, raw, crushing weight. Suspended above the King's Chamber are 5 relieving chambers. These aren't rooms for people. They are hollow spaces separated by massive granite beams, designed for one single purpose: to deflect the millions of tons of limestone pressing down from above, pushing the weight outward rather than letting it crush the pharaoh's crypt. It is engineering born of paranoia and perfected by genius. The sarcophagus itself is larger than the doorway leading into the chamber. It wasn't brought in after construction. The entire pyramid was built around that single empty granite box. It probably took about 20 years to finish. 20 years of relentless, deafening noise. And when the final block was placed, the Great Pyramid did not look like the rugged, stepped mountain we see today. It was covered entirely in polished Tura limestone casing stones. It was completely smooth, blindingly white, and highly reflective. Under the blazing Egyptian sun, it would have looked like a glowing beacon, visible from mountains miles away. At its very peak sat the pyramidion, the capstone. Many believe it was plated in electrum, a naturally occurring alloy of gold and silver, designed to catch the very first ray of the morning sun and the very last ray of dusk. The Great Pyramid wasn't just a tomb. It was an optical illusion, a machine designed to connect the earth to the cosmos. Beside it, they buried massive solar boats, perfectly disassembled into over 1,000 pieces of Lebanese cedar, intended for the pharaoh to sail across the heavens with the sun god Ra. Everything was built for eternity. But eternity is a long time. Over the millennia, empires rose and fell. The Romans came, the Greeks came, and eventually expanding medieval cities like Cairo needed building materials. The Great Pyramid became the world's most convenient quarry. The beautiful white casing stones were stripped away, pried off one by one to build mosques and fortresses in Cairo. The golden capstone vanished into the hands of thieves. Earthquakes rattled the structure, shifting the core blocks. What we are looking at today when we see the Great Pyramid is not the finished product. We are looking at its skeleton, the raw, exposed, brutalist core that was never meant to be seen. Yet, even stripped of its skin, it remains the last standing wonder of the ancient world. It held the title of the tallest man-made structure on Earth for nearly 4,000 years, until the spire of the Lincoln Cathedral was raised in the 14th century. The Great Pyramid of Giza is not an inexplicable mystery, and saying it was built by aliens is an insult to human ingenuity. It is the ultimate testament to what human beings can accomplish with unlimited resources, a unified belief system, and generations of hard, agonizing work. It is administration, logistics, and mathematics applied on a godly scale. Generations of workers lived and died in its shadow. Children were born in the workers' village, grew old and passed away, knowing nothing but the constant, rhythmic sound of chisels on stone. They built a mountain that has brutally resisted time itself. The wind blows across the Giza Plateau just as it did 4,500 years ago, but now it crashes against a monument that refuses to die. The Great Pyramid stands as a mirror reflecting our own ambition. proves that we do not need magic to create miracles. We only need will. And hidden within its immense bulk, in the dark voids that our modern technology is only just beginning to uncover, the architects of the ancient world are still whispering to us. What do you think is hiding inside that newly discovered massive void? A secret tomb? Ancient treasures? Or just empty space? Let me know your theories down in the comments. If you want to keep unraveling the greatest mysteries of human history, make sure you hit subscribe and turn on notifications. Until next time, keep digging.